Welcome to this introduction to my presentation on Buyside M&A, an art or a science. Now, I've done a quite extensive blog post on this, which you can access at jbdcolleague.com/Buyside. But I wanted to put this presentation together briefly so that I can run you through the main points and you can get the point and the gist of the presentation without having to read the blog post. Of course, you can always go back to it. Inevitably, using the 6-minute strategist methodology, there are 6 steps: objective setting, landscape defining, screening, shortlisting, refining, and approaching. So let's look at the first one of those, which is really going through with the client their strategic objectives. Now, I'm talking in a context here of a technology company, and when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about financial services in technology. So there's going to be that flavour to this presentation, but I'm sure you'll get the idea of the sorts of things you need to go through. In this case, you want to look at the technology that they want to acquire, the sorts of client base, the geography, both of the offices of the company that's being acquired and where their clients are dispersed. Look at some key financials, the competencies that'll come on board, the skills and the expertise, and the type of business it is, the business model they use, and is this compatible with your client. So having established that, you want to cover another sort of 6 points which I think are quite important in terms of setting the scene. And the first of these is to understand what your client's competitors have been up to. Then to discuss with your client the major industry trends and the things which are going on around them, because you really want to try to develop a strategy which is forward thinking, not backwards looking. It's important to establish that your client's got the financial resources available to do the deal, and you need to understand who the deal team's going to be, who's going to have point responsibility, who do you report to. A clear understanding of how the process is going to work, and then some sort of timetable should be agreed, bearing in mind that these M&A transactions can take up to 6 months. So then the key task sets out, and that is to create the competitive landscape so that you can understand who's out there. And I like to try and get a holistic view of the businesses that we're going to have a look at and then narrow down. So the database creation is the crucial step. And this tries to take in, but it doesn't try to build a highly comprehensive database, but tries to take in key data around a summary of the business, the type of business model, the income model that the company uses, its vertical and horizontal competencies, some information about its revenues, employee numbers, its technology partners, its website, which you'll want to look at later, the ownership of the company. At this stage, really only looking at whether it's public and private, and possibly whether there's a private equity involvement. And then also look at the sectors and subsectors that the business serves, and then its location and the office locations that it may have in addition to its main location. So those are some of the things I like to try to get in. And then I go through an initial screening and shortlisting process, and this involves ranking the companies against the strategic fit with the client's objectives. I like to understand things as well, like the age of the company, more details about the ownership, and some idea of its financial track record. So moving on from there and trying to refine the shortlist, it's important to try to establish whether or not there's a likely reason for a sale. Now, that may be something unfortunate like death, disease, or divorce, but equally, if the owners are getting older, they may want to consider retiring, that sort of thing. Need to look at the valuation of the business, not so much in terms of the metrics of deals done before, but more in terms of how the business has been performing and where it sits in terms of its own value against its profitability and its growth. Important to look at the detail of the shareholder structure, and here you're looking for things like deliverability of a deal. So you want to know that there's a majority of shareholders who can actually vote for a deal if you want it. There's nothing worse than going a long way down and then having some blocking minority, and I've had that happen to me in the past. Obviously need to have more detail on the financial performance of the business and do some financial analysis, derive a few ratios and see how the business is performing, and perhaps look at them in the context of the peer group. And then finally, a good way of presenting the a summary of the business is perhaps using a short SWOT analysis to present it to the client. The next stage really is looking at the approaching the target on behalf of the client, and this is really done, well, I always try and do this initially on a no-names basis. Trying to find the right person to speak to is actually easier today than it has been in the past, because you can use an extensive array of social media tools. LinkedIn is the primary one, although Twitter's also quite useful. If you can find a connection, then you can get a warm introduction, or indeed using groups you can make a direct approach. Indeed, in many cases I've been able to go back to previous contacts in my call logs and speak to somebody I've already spoken to in the past. Failing that, it's the old cold calling techniques. So that's a quick run through this deal origination Buyside M&A presentation. If you'd like to talk to me about it in more detail, then my contact details are on the screen. Email me john@jbdcollie.com. My mobile number is 07813 672 612, and if you want to read the whole presentation, it's at jbdcollie.com/Buyside. Thank you for your time today. I really appreciate you having a look at this video. I hope you've got something useful from it, and the blog post is 3,000 plus words, so there's an awful lot in that. Do go and take a look. I look forward to seeing you very soon. Thank you very much for joining the conversation.